Ladies and gentlemen, guys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Age of Warfare podcast. I am Mantis Maximus, and as always, that is Negate Aiden Cordier, and we are ready for another cool, wonderful episode. And this one should be pretty fun, and this one might run a little longer than normal because we got a fun one for you guys. We're going to be talking about propaganda. I'm sure something you guys are very familiar with, propaganda. So we're going to go into the history of propaganda and how it's affected us in history in general. But as always, Aiden, before we get started, how are you today, my friend?
I am doing well. The weather report is the sun is shining for once, but it's not cloud covered. It's not too bright. It's actually been a pretty hellish week actually at work because it's the start of the term again. So the students got their student loans, and our deliveries didn't come up to scratch, and we sold out half the shop every day, and it was a bit mad. As well, so there's a lot of rushing around, but it's one of those, where you've worked hard and you just feel like, you know what, I did something this week.
Right.
So yeah, I'm in a pretty chipper mood for having done some hard work this week and feeling fulfilled, as it were.
There you go, and that's always a good thing. And for me, pretty much the same thing, man. Just working on my books and really not too much. I've been mailing a lot of books out, getting a lot of book orders. I had to go to the post office 3 times this week to mail out books. So,
wow.
Yeah, that's always fun. But it always means people are getting my books. So, thank you very much for those supporting me. You rock. But anyway, Aiden, now that we've kind of bragged about the wonderful weeks we've had, it's time to get into the topic at hand. And I'm going to start off with a banger. So, prepare yourself.
Go for it.
Yeah, we are going to show this off. Is some Roman propaganda.
It's the Norman propaganda.
Roman propaganda here.
Yeah.
So
that is the death of Harold. You see the arrow in the eye there as well. Fun fact about this: there is a second burial tapestry that was made in the Victorian period. And that is in Reading. We have an actual replica of it made by hand and stitched. But because it was Victorian, all of the naked people got underwear. So that's in there. But yeah, we have one that I can just go and see whenever I want to look at. But yeah, carry on. This is one of my favourite bits.
Oh no! It's good that we brought that up. That's what I was hoping for, that you recognize that piece of Norman propaganda, since it's close to where you are. So so I told you I was going to start with quite the banger, and now we got So before I get something else, I want you to define propaganda for those who might not be as familiar, or what's the actual definition and use of propaganda.
So, in the most simple terms, propaganda is telling good things about yourself while not mentioning the bad things. So it's an unbalanced opinion of something, of we're really good, look at us, we're really good. It doesn't necessarily have to be a lie. In fact, the best propaganda isn't always a lie. The best propaganda has at least a half truth in it. So a good propaganda will be, we are the best podcast on live at the moment. The point there is, the half truth is, we're on live at the moment. I haven't looked up any information to have that. I haven't fact checked any of that.
Right.
I think we're a good podcast. So there's the opinion side of it that's gone in there. So it could be true, but it needs to then be verified. Propaganda, if you don't verify propaganda, if you verify propaganda, you start to go, well, actually, not quite. This is slightly wrong. But that's the nature of propaganda, is you say something, there's a half-truth in there, there's an opinion in there, and you're trying to make the opinion sound like the truth. and that's what propaganda is.
And here's a fan made Roman propaganda. This is obviously fan made because I really had a tough time finding any Roman propaganda. That was actually what I was hoping to find. I was having
coins. It was on coins. That's why.
On the coins, but I'm talking about posters, something like this. But he couldn't really find any. So, which is kind of a missed opportunity for the Romans because the Romans were always full of themselves, saying, "Oh, we were superior in every way." They were always full of themselves.
So the way that they did it, obviously, with the lack of loads of paper, was painting as well.
Right.
But a lot of people wouldn't see paintings, so
sort
of tell by the wayside type of thing. But I completely agree with you that they could have done a bit more with that.
But understanding the technological limitations back then, and the printing press, and brings us to the last topic we were talking about, the printing press. I mean, it kind of, now we're going to go on a bit of a tangent here because it kind of makes you think about something. What if the Romans had the printing press? What if the printing press was invented in 200 BC or 100 BC or during the Augustus era? They probably would have been the masters of propaganda.
I really don't think Augustus really needed the printing press for the amount of propaganda he had out. When you look at, say, the 12 Caesars, that book is written, it shows Augustus as being the best emperor. And all of the emperors, it shows them as being good in certain ways or bad in certain ways for the time period it was written in, obviously. You then get another one written, was that Procopius? Yeah, and then there was another one written by, it was Procopius who wrote the 12 Caesars. And he wrote that, and that was Augustan propaganda. So they did it for the upper classes, for the Senate, of saying, and that was more of a, like, these are the people we don't like, these are the people we do like. So we're getting that view from that. The Byzantines did very, very similar things. Michael Psellus was the guy who wrote, essentially, he reprised the 12 Caesars, but as a book on the emperors for the Byzantines. So you did get this essentially paper copy of propaganda and propaganda books, as it were, about this. And this then comes back to our history. However, as you're saying about the printing press, there are many stories written about the Roman Empire surviving and then coming into the modern world. I have one that I have written, never published, but I have written about this before. There's one that I did read. It's called Romanitas, and it's about the Roman Empire in basically the modern age and what has come of it through all of that. And that does focus on this whole propaganda side of it, of how everything is seen. And then it comes from that. Hence why I read that book and I was like, "Ooh, yes, I can write something like this." But yeah, it is it is amazing. If they had the printing press as well, Diocletian, my obsession with Diocletian, his reforms, I think, would, with the printing press style propaganda of leaflets, pamphlets, posters, things like that, would have actually had more of an impact. And I don't think that we would have had that massive split after Diocletian.
So here's one of the earliest genuine forms of propaganda: the Julius Caesar coin. Yep, the Julius Caesar coins. You got the Caesar on one side, and then one was meant to be a chariot on the other, conquering Gaul.
Yeah, and as you'll notice, the shield shape is a bit weird. It's non-Roman. So it's this. I think I've mentioned this before a few times, of how this is how they let people know what was going on in the empire, would be the coinage as well. There's also a famous one from a naval battle, and it was the triumvirate with Octavian. And this gets into literally just after this as well. And it's you show who won a battle. And this goes back to the Romans trying to let people know, we won this, these are the people we don't like Marius and Sulla level stuff. Like, yeah, we're just proving it by sending it around, and they showed they're using the coins to do this as well, because if you don't have paper and you've got something you want to make sure that everyone sees, coins. That's a good way of doing it as well. So yeah, that's a really nice coin as well.
Yep. So that's one of the earlier forms of propaganda. You want to go to the ancient world.
We can go back further. Go back further to you've got the Epic of Gilgamesh as well.
Gilgamesh, yes.
That comes back from some of the very earliest propaganda. We know very little about that. But then you get the Egyptian battles where the Egyptians against the Canaanites, and they defeated them. And we know about this from a tomb in Thebes, I believe it is. I could be corrected on that. And it was scribed in there about how they won this great battle because they were awesome. And that is it. That's the opinion side. Is we were awesome is why we won the battle. They won the battle because they were just better. But not so much awesome. They just did better in the battle, which then, weirdly ugh, as I found out when I was doing a bit of background on this, that entire battle led to the siege of Megiddo, which I knew that bit. I didn't realise that's the source of our word Armageddon as well. That's in that word in our national conscience. What you think about that word comes from how well the Egyptians did. But if actually you look at the battle, it was just a fairly standard they won the battle thing. It was like casualties were obviously the losing side lost more, but it wasn't like, you know, some of the Roman ones where they lose a few hundred and then the enemy loses thousands. It wasn't like that. It was fairly even, with the losing side obviously losing more because they lost. But having it to the level of what we would consider something as Armageddon, that's when you're getting into propaganda levels of this as well. So, the raised gesti.
I want to go into that. Yeah, the raised gesti. One of the forms of Roman propaganda by, of course, Augustus, and here's the actual replica of the raised gesti. You know, and here we go, which translates to this: to the Roman plebs, I paid out 300 sesterces per man in accordance to the will of my father. To the municipal towns, I paid money for the lands, which I assigned to soldiers. Paid for the lands in the provinces was about 260 million. I was the first and only one to do this. I freed the sea from pirates. The whole of Italy voluntarily took oath of allegiance to me and demanded me as its leader in the war in which I was victorious at Actium. So that's what translates.
Actium. Yeah, Actium's the battle I was on about.
Actium, right?
So you get the res gesti is really, really famous purely because it survived. But it was a thing that it did. Think of an obituary. When you write an obituary, an obituary is essentially propaganda. You think when. And this gets it right. Here's a connection to the modern times to get this straight through his head. So when you see that a child on the news has been shot by the police, but I don't know why my child was shot. He'd never do anything wrong.
Right, correct.
Generally, when you look into it, but it's in modern parlance, we know that an obituary is just the good things. We know that it excludes the bad things. We accept that it is propaganda, and that in that moment we don't do that. And this is where you get this phrase of, but my child would never do anything bad. And it's just a trotted out phrase. The person often doesn't mean that. It's just the acceptance. And the res gesti was a bit like an obituary. It was all of those good things that they did, of these amazing things. But there's a key phrase in there of, they demanded that I was in charge of them.
Yes, right.
Yes, and it's the truth that he was the one that they chose to be leader from that. And he was chosen to be leader. They didn't demand that he was leader. That wasn't everyone going, you know what, we can't do anything unless this guy's in charge. That wasn't the thought. It's making making it look better than it was. That propaganda style of country. So what we got up next?
What we have next is Pericles. I don't know if you're familiar with Pericles. He was a leader of Athens during the 5th century BC. Pericles in ancient Greece.
Yes, he was, and he was pretty good at what he did as well. Actually, to be fair, it's like being pretty good at what you do actually kind of helps with this type of thing. Because you can point to it and go, actually, he kind of did do some good stuff. So.
He basically made an oration that pretty much connected the deaths of Athenians to the superiority of his people and the continuation of a war that pushed Athens' political agenda. So basically, Pericles said, you know why people hate us? Because they can't be like us. We're superior. We're superior in every way. That's why our enemies despise us. And it's actually,
didn't he win the battle of, what was it? When the battle of Kerkyra happened, it was Kerkyra, which is now Corfu. It was a whole thing when Sparta and Athens were fighting. That Athens was always known for its very good navy, and Sparta for its very good land army. But if Sparta got a very good navy, but it couldn't, Athens couldn't really compete then, because it would be evens on the water, but on land they knew that the Spartans were that little bit better. So what they did was they shut them down by going round and going up to where Corfu is. It was called Kerkyra at the time, and Kerkyra had a very good navy. And they variously destroyed or took the ships away, so that the Spartans couldn't fight them on the sea because they could fight them on the land. And there was lots of stalemate going on in that war. Pericles was one of the generals in the war, if I remember correctly, right. And he won some famous battles against the Spartans on land.
And here's the actual quote written by Julius who was a historian back then. Yep. And he says, "Let me say that our system of government does not comprise the institutions of our neighbors. Our constitution is called democracy because power is in the hands of not a minority, but of the whole people."
All right. So, shall we break that down for propaganda there? Who was considered a person in Athens? The citizens. If you were a non-citizen, you weren't considered a person. However, certain people, if you had money or you weren't a citizen because you were from a different state, but you were there, you were considered part of the people. Yeah, Athens had slaves. They didn't count. Athens had poor people. Really, the lowest rungs of the poor, yeah, they didn't count on this as well. It was citizens only, essentially. So unless you were citizens, and it's not like a citizen these days where all you have to do is be born in the country or naturalized to a country. It's literally just the rich people got to do what they want. The Athenian democracy at that point was nigh on an oligarchy. The way it was just an oligarchy with more people. The level of stuff. So that you can see where the propaganda comes into it there quite easily, because he's talking about all of the people. As we understand it these days, people is, well, that's everyone's a person, whether they're a citizen, whether they're not a citizen, but that wasn't what it was. He was doing it for the people who were the citizens. The ethos behind that being it was only the citizens expected to fight, depending on what level. So people were people who were expected to fight, which is very, very similar to the Spartans, actually, with the whole you're not part of us, our people, unless you will go into the field and fight for us. But then they excluded a bunch of people and said that they couldn't fight for them. So a bit catch-22 there,
right?
On that as well. Yes. But a great example. A great example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, sorry, my computer just crashed, so unfortunately, I had to restart it. So, that's why you don't see the screen anymore. So sorry about that. A little bit of technical difficulty there.
bit of percussive maintenance. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, the third one was Pi Ramses, claiming to be the greatest leader of the world back in in Egyptian times. That's the next piece of propaganda I wanted to cover.
Because Egypt knew about the rest of the world, didn't they? Yeah, they
exactly.
Yeah, all those Chinese emperors that they were mates with, and
but
everything going on in the Americas that everyone forgets was happening at exactly the same time.
Yeah, it's fun, but I wanted to touch on that one because Pi Ramses made quite the statement about being the greatest world leader in the world, and understand that Egypt, the only people they knew were the Canaanites, the Libyans,
Canaanites.
Canaanites. There you go. I'm sorry, Canaanites, the Libyans, the Kushtites, the Nubians, the Minoans, to a degree as trading partners, the Hittites, and the Hyksos and the Assyrians. I mean, the only
and the sea peoples. Even though no one else knows who they are.
but nobody knows who they are, and we have to do an episode on them one day. Maybe we have to do an episode about that. But the idea was that Egypt. He made such a bold statement, even though Egypt only knew about the island of Crete at the most northwestern point was Crete. The northernmost port they knew was Anatolia, which is modern day Turkey, and they only knew as south as the kingdom of Punt, which was they say in Ethiopia, and the
remember our map of Africa when we did that episode.
Yeah,
and all of that stuff that happened south of the equator that we went into, like even the Zulus, for example. Obviously, Zulus were a lot later in their prominence, but
you had a Bantu
there were other
tribe.
people doing stuff there.
There's
so many peoples.
The Sub-Saharan Bantu, people, and
the Ghanaians are another one who were famously incredibly rich around the same sort of time period as well.
And of course, you can't forget the Chinese, of course, the Shang tribe, the Shang dynasty in China. But it's so crazy that of course, but that's the thing about propaganda, Aiden, is that propaganda is focused on the people. I can't say you're not focused on the rest of the world. It's what they call tunnel vision. There you go. That's the word I'm looking for. Tunnel vision. You only focus around where you are and your immediate borders.
Here's one that's going to really mess with people. So advertising is a form of propaganda.
Right.
Propaganda is perpetuated by governments, and is political, essentially, propaganda in the main. However, advertising is a form of that. If you think about it, if you watch an advert for a company, they're always saying about how good they are. Well, of course they're saying about how good they are because they want you to buy the products, but that's propaganda. They're never going to tell you that this thing we've got that will clean all of your white shirts because it's very good at washing your white shirts, that you might put a white shirt in there where you got a red wine stain on there that you didn't realise, and you left it a little bit too long and they won't get that out. Well, they're not going to mention that because you're not going to buy their product. So advertising is, again, propaganda. But when you look at a country as well, you're advertising your country. And one of the big things with advertising is you have a target audience. So you accept that there are people who are not interested in this. We had a bit of a discussion about this before the episode about some people just aren't interested in history. So obviously they're not going to come and watch our podcast. So there'd be no point in us trying to advertise to them too much because they're never going to be interested. What you're doing is you're trying to get the majority of those people. There's your target audience. You want that biggest target audience possible, and you want to tell them this is truth. And once you've got that biggest target audience, that minority audience is just going to go, well, we're not interested, and they won't say anything. Or if they do try and say anything, there'll be all these other people that turn around and do your job for you. And that's when you get into the politics side of it, of people being shouted down because they're in the minority of opinion. It doesn't mean that the minority opinion or the majority opinion is correct. Sometimes the majority opinion is the correct, I say a correct opinion, as far as that goes, obviously, but is the more moral way to go, to put it that way. And the minority will not be the more moral way, or it could be completely the other way around. But it's once you have a majority, and this then goes back to the Athenian thing of the demos, the rule by the demos, which is democracy, demos being the people, and then you get the tyranny of democracy, which then comes up in Greek political thought as well. She's going back to so much stuff I studied at university on Greek political thought, which is the core of all of this in the West, is actually Greek political thought.
Exactly. So, don't forget, the Greeks were the inventors of democracy. You can say, or at least the republic. Because it's different, because democracy and republic are kind of two different things. A democracy is ruled by the people, while our republic is ruled by a senate.
So the difference is it's form of government and what bracket it falls into. So, for example, we're a democracy. You guys are a democracy. The US is a republic form of democracy. It's about
a democratic republic.
So your democratic republic, whereas we're a constitutional monarchy, which is despite people not thinking we do have a constitution, it's just weird, is that the people do rule, but we have a monarch and we have a constitution to balance those powers, hence why our constitution's all over the place.
Yeah, but the monarch is more of a... But the monarch, in the modern time, is more like a figurehead.
It's a head of state, so you get the head of state and then you get the ruler, and those lines can be blurred in the old sense of a monarchy, whereas in a modern constitutional monarchy, they're a head of state, and then you get the person who's normally in charge of the running of the country, and that's how that works.
Yeah, the parliament. So it's really interesting. I kind of wanted to touch on the Gilgamesh thing you were talking about earlier, because Gilgamesh was I believe he was Sumerian. The Sumerians, one of the first one, and it goes back to a campaign I played on Age of Empires on the definitive edition.
As soon as I said Gilgamesh, I knew this would come up. Because it has to. It has to.
Because because the Sumerians were one of the original civilizations you could play on the original Age of Empires. But the new Age of Empires definitive edition finally has a Sumerian campaign. You play as Gilgamesh, and the idea is Gilgamesh was this defined figure that would put the Sumerians on the map. Right? He was the one who was going to put the Sumerians on the map, bring all the tribes together. Take out all the rival tribes, the Akkadians. He was, and everybody saw that. Everybody believed that Gilgamesh was the one that would take out all the corrupt leaders and be this defined human being to put everything together. But then when you get later into the campaign, Gilgamesh becomes greedy and decides he was only going to do everything for himself. He was going to abuse his power. But the problem, but everybody believed otherwise. The supporters of Gilgamesh were really on his side.
One of the really interesting things about we know about Gilgamesh from the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is essentially just a giant poem about it. So you get this with the Scandinavian sagas as well. It's another cultural group who has this defining thing. But every cultural group has this one leader they look to. Who's that? So we've already touched on Augustus. For the Romans, he was, if you're going to have an emperor, Augustus, he's your man. Obviously, when you're Sumerians, Gilgamesh, you always want to be like Gilgamesh. You try and relate yourselves to these people. Right. If you look at the modern stage as well, the US is one of the ones, the clearest one. You've got the whole George Washington thing. Right. As well, with this whole he's this, and obviously in the modern times, which we will touch on slightly later, with the way that the modern world is, it's easier to know about the past. We're not so propagandistic about those things that we don't stop people knowing these things and they're not hidden. Whereas with these historical figures, it's not that they're actively hidden, it's that they didn't talk about them. But then because so little survives, the thing that was biggest, which would have been the major propaganda, is going to be the thing that survives. So we've just lost that information. It's not that it's hidden anywhere. It's we're looking for it. We're trying to find these things out. We know certain parts about this by finding little bits here and there. And you have to build this other part of it that's there because it just isn't written down. Whereas obviously in the modern times, as soon as you get into past the printing press, you've got that other side there that does survive. Right. Especially because this is why the US is often a good example of these things, because it is one of the newer countries that formed after the printing press. So we've got a view of the whole thing going through, so you can tie things to bits of US history and go, this is a bit like this. Therefore, if that happened in US history, is there a potential this could have happened in this sequence of events in this other thing that's quite similar as well? Like the comparisons between, well, we've got a lot of stuff from Rome, obviously, the Roman Empire and the Roman Republic, more the Roman Republic and the US as a republic. How do they compare as well? So we can see those things, because it's the early republic, obviously, where we don't have as much of this information because it is that bit older, exactly. As well.
Now, I'm going to bring up an interesting tangent about propaganda. It's a pretty interesting one, so stick with me here. Let me explain. Civilization, right? The Civilization series. Yeah. You have the different forms of government, right? Obviously, everybody's the most common form of government is monarchy. Everybody must, when you first play the game, your mission is to get to is pushing you to monarchy, towards a monarchy, kind of government.
It's basically the set term would be an autocracy, going back to this Greek political thought. Auto, single, cracy is to do with who's in charge. So it's singular in charge. Monarchy is the way, mono, singular, archy, in charge. And then arc is, if you look through words with that in them, you'll notice a theme going on there. So it's just monarchy is more of a Latinization of this original Greek version of it. Just to give a little bit of a background there for you.
Yeah, but if you notice, especially in Civilization 2, it's kind of weird because when you notice you get into republic and democracy, the game kind of becomes harder because it kind of pushes you towards being less militaristic. It actually punishes you. So in other words, in Civilization 2, if you had two units away, two squares away from a city, your people become unhappy. But then you still have corruption. But if you switch to a communism. But believe it or not, communism was actually the best government type in Civilization 2 because you had no corruption and you could fight freely.
Playing late game, it was the one that didn't believe in science. It was like the theocratic type of one. Because that was science tree, get rid of that, you just got all the money.
Yeah, that's fundamentalism. Yeah,
fundamentalism. Yeah, because it was just that was a technical thing of the game, which was.
It literally cut your science in half.
Yeah, but if you were only researching future tech, it didn't really matter.
But it was one of my favorite government types to go into in late game because now I could just go destroy everyone. But that's kind of and I think we have Lee Edwards joining in. It says, "I am corruption." Hey, Lee, thank you for coming on and joining us.
I will be right back.
So Lee, thank you for joining us, my friend. I hope everything is well with you. We're having some technical difficulties on my end with my PC crashing, but we'll still keep the show going. So we're talking about propaganda and talking about the history of propaganda. Lee, I wanted to ask you, what what was the first form of propaganda you bumped into growing up? What was what was something you bumped into when you were growing up, propaganda wise? He says, "I come, Aiden Meaves." It's a coincidence. He'll be right back. He just probably had to get some water or something, or get something, or probably looking for something for the show. So I kind of bring that question to you. What was the earliest form of propaganda that you were exposed to, so to say? So, well,
I'm back.
there we go. There goes. There we go. Lee was already talking smack, saying that as soon as you came in, you left.
Well, I want to keep him on tent hooks,
Yeah, you want to keep him.
He gets to see too much of my face. There was a time limit that he gets.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, Aiden's too sexy for your viewing pressure.
Yeah.
Anyway,
like where did we get to? We were talking about how great we were, weren't we?
Yeah, pretty much, right? So
yeah, actually, this so going from the civilization thing, this propaganda that comes out of it is about control of people and about preventing people from doing things, because, like I said before, if you've got a majority of people that will believe this, which is why you put in as much truth as possible and you just twist it ever so slightly
right.
to make yourself look good. And this comes with that whole getting away from the city thing is, well, where are our troops? Are our poor boys dying? But if everyone believes in that war that you have, people, yes, they won't like the outcome of it, but they will be able to justify it to themselves because they'll be able to point to propaganda and convince themselves of it, because they want to believe that there is a purpose when it comes to things like that, on those moral things, which is why propaganda then becomes a little bit easier in those circumstances if you're fighting what you would term as a moral war, which obviously has its issues. But for example, you've got the Second World War fighting against Japan for the US. They attacked the US, they weren't going to stop attacking the US. It's a moral obligation that we need to protect our people. That was that ethos there. With the Nazis, with what they're doing, you knew that it was against what your core tenets of your population were, so you fought against that.
So I asked Steve what was his first exposure to propaganda, and he said, I lived in Germany during the Cold War, right on the border of East and West, and Russia's always having radio going on out strong. So yeah, so basically, Lee was kind of exposed to the Cold War, kind of propaganda and he continues saying, Soviet Union must, like Russia today, lies about how powerful the military is. Without nukes, Russia is Australian military-wise, if not even a little weaker.
Yeah, it's and this is one of the things is, I don't think Lee's ragging on Australia, but Australia, for its giant size, kind of a small population in it. Russia as well, giant size, relatively small population.
And so now I wanted to get into the final piece of ancient propaganda, and that's this the state of Hammurabi, propaganda as not in the ancient world, the Code of Hammurabi, if you remember that. Yeah, and this was the earliest examples with the stealth of Hammurabi, commissioned by Hammurabi himself, the sixth king of Babylon. And this is both art and a code of laws and punishment set down by Hammurabi himself. So
this is often considered. So it's really interesting how it's often viewed.
So yeah, it's the cuneiform,
which is absolutely beautiful when it's carved.
Yeah, it's
one of the big things about this, the Code of Hammurabi is often seen as the early parts of human rights charters, or the life and liberty aspects that come into the US Constitution, and this is seen as often that core bit of a Bill of Rights, as it were, and where we bring this all from. which in itself is propaganda on top of that as well. So when you start reading
Right.
this, it's like reading some of the Old Testament laws. It's like, oh, you mix two threads. Nah, that's a stoning for you. It's like, we don't really think about it like that anymore. Let's not do that. But this was of that time period. So while it had those initial thoughts in there, there
And
are
they
other
were,
ones, obviously, that are considered ancient sources for this around the similar time period. But yeah, the Code of Hammurabi is that
there were
codification.
200 and yeah, there were 281 lists of there were 281 laws, and they were strict by today's standards. And you ever heard the idiom "eye for an eye"?
Yeah,
It comes
yeah,
from the Code of Hammurabi. This is the birthplace of that idiom. But what's most significant is that Hammurabi was a Babylon, and though he showed respect to the Sumerian gods, basically, here's the thing: he showed respect to the gods of Sumeria, but he was a conqueror of the Sumerian descended states. You know?
it's one one of the weirdest things about this.
Yeah.
One of the things the Babylonians did was when they conquered a people, and this wasn't uncommon for people to do at that time period, but you would displace some of those people. You take a group and you move them somewhere else, and it's to split people up so that they can't unify and fight against you in a rebellion. So you ended up with a large Jewish community in Babylon as well, which is, people recognize this from some of the, if you look at some of the early parts of Christianity and some of those bits that connect in with Judaism as well. You'll see that type of thing, when they lived there, they didn't want to leave after they could leave because their life was better. Some of the elements of that were propaganda about how life was bad back there, sort of trying to fight against that grass is greener on the other side type of idea. And no, it's worse over there. You don't want to go back there. No, that's horrible. And telling the people there, well, you don't want to come to Babylon. It's like, you'll be treated badly if you come to Babylon.
Right.
So you then keep the groups separate, and then each group then, after enough time, each group then doesn't want to move between those two places. You then split a people, and then if they do go back against each other, you don't need propaganda now because they're just going to fight it out amongst themselves. And then it's divide and conquer, essentially, at that point as well. Which is
I got a good one to show you. Now, we're definitely going to be jumping now.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be jumping quite a bit here. But here is a Revolutionary War propaganda piece here. And I'm sure Nee might appreciate this one as well. Propaganda for the Americans during the Revolutionary War.
So something interesting about this is that first phrase that is used was actually something used in recruitment in Britain around the same time period. The phrasing, obviously being of the same language, you're going to get that, but it's all to do with making a person feel good about themselves, getting people to join the military. This is it's the advertising propaganda crossover. So brave, that's subjective. Are you brave? Are you not brave? Well, you're not going to find out until you're in combat. That's a thing that we all know now. We'll get to the Vietnam War. Don't you worry, because that's an amazing one. So healthy, well, obviously you can work out if you're healthy or not. Able-bodied, kind of subjective, but obviously again, well disposed. That's very generic. It's sort of like, no, I think I'm well disposed. Young, you're as young as you feel, and that might sound like something trite that older people say, but it is generally actually quite true that you can feel young in that perspective as well. So that entire thing this shows a really good part of propaganda of you mixing subjective with objective. Are you healthy? Well, that's a really objective standard. It's like if you turn up with a broken arm and half your teeth missing, well, you're not healthy. You know you're not healthy. You quite obviously know you're not healthy. Are you brave? How you can say a good story about yourself, how you were brave and did something as well. and that's subjective enough to get you to come in to do this as well. But that also reminds me of some later US propaganda of World War II, actually, about these people are your allies. There's a whole series of posters about it because the propaganda went too far about, isn't America amazing? We're better than everyone else. And it's like, these people, we're allies with them. Like, yeah, they may not look like us, but they're on our side. They're on our side. So you have to use propaganda to draw back your other propaganda without negating it as well. So you can get yourself into a bit of a state with it as well. I don't know. We never used propaganda in the Revolutionary War, because you're just a bunch of rebellious people on the other side of the world. What you were doing, bloody colonials.
and then there's another one that I found interesting. Let me bring up the screen again. Join or die. And they go, the original states of the colonial states, New England, New York, New Jersey, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland.
Maryland, yeah. What's the R at the top? Would be
the R. The R.
Ooh,
it's a good one. It's a good question. The
R. Lee, you should know this one.
Yeah.
R. What's R?
The R.
Rest of everyone else. That's something we need to find out.
It might have been the original name of Delaware before it became Delaware, if I'm correct.
Was Delaware its own republic? Possibly.
Possibly, yeah.
One of the other really interesting things about this, if you look at the snake, you look at the "Don't Tread on Me" stuff from later on. This is what it's referencing as well. It's that same idea of we have now unified. You don't tread on us because we have now unified, because it's an image that shows propaganda as well. Well, flags are propaganda. In that gets really deep. Let's gloss over that one for a second. Yeah.
Actually, you know what it is? That's Pennsylvania. What it is? It's a mark. That's a P for Pennsylvania.
I was wondering if it was a script thing as well. Pennsylvania. Yeah. All right. That makes sense.
Most like it's a mark. It's a mark right here on the. It's a P. That's Pennsylvania. That's what it is. That's Pennsylvania. Yep. And how I know this is because here's a better picture of the same piece of propaganda. Here's a better picture of it.
Where the script's been
see the P.
Yeah.
The period. That's Pennsylvania. Yep. Nee got it. Yep. The R was supposed to be a P. Yep. Yeah, it took a little bit, but yeah, I found out it was an error. It was a script error. So there we go.
I don't think the US should be complaining about people being late. 2 World Wars.
Ouch. That's a bit of a sting there,
but the reason for that, some of this banter that I have with Lee is it shows some of the old propaganda that now we know our history of it is used as banter. Of you pretend that you believe the propaganda of the time, even though you know it's not true. You use that as a bit of a joke because everyone knows it's not true. That's the essence of banter. Everyone knows it's not true. You say something, but it's similar to propaganda in that sense.
This is what Lee was talking about, the Vietnam War. The North Vietnamese taking over the South Vietnamese. And this the communist hammer going down. Right. Obviously, this isn't Vietnamese, so I don't know what it says, but you have an idea that this is supposed to be a fight against communists. This is what happens if you let the communists win. The shot, they'll crush you. You'll be under the boot of communism.
Yeah. And notice that it's sickles and hammers, because that's another
Sickles and
element.
hammers, right?
That's communist.
Yeah.
One of the elements that you get with this, 2 seconds, that'd be oh no, let's turn this silence off. Cool. One of the interesting things about the Vietnam War. So the Vietnam War is the first war to be properly televised, where we actually had television as to be propaganda. So radio propaganda is the Nazis in World War II. You got Lord Ha Ha as well, and that went on to the Soviet Union, picked up on a lot of that as well, as Lee was saying earlier. That was still going on in our lifetimes. So how the US got into the Vietnam War was the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was the worst case of propaganda. It was the US government attacked their own ships and blamed it on someone else. And it was a conspiracy theory that was proved to be true. And it was then shown that they were using propaganda elements of, look, they're attacking us and all we're doing is being here trying to help. And then obviously it gets found out later that there is this lie beyond it as well, because of all of this televisation. Now, the televisation can it be considered propaganda by showing the realities of something? It can be considered propaganda against a government that is trying to prosecute this war, is trying to get people behind them to try and win the war, of showing, look how horrific it is that we are doing this. And Vietnam was the war that really showed us this element and what actually happens when you show all of these things as well. At least brought up a couple of bits to do with that as well. And you then get, after that, obviously it goes into the Cold War as well, that the propaganda, people start believing their own propaganda as well. So you could have this horrible situation. Think of McCarthy as well. It's really obvious there that this paranoid element that goes into it, that originally comes from, say, the Nazi propaganda as well, of the radios. It's this paranoia of, or even goes back to, it's the join us or die element of it that we see really early on.
And then here's another piece of propaganda I found, the Viet Congs, the Southern guerrillas are truly gutsy, promoting the Viet Congs. You have women fighting, in the ranks.
That everyone can fight because we are all inclusive against this. It's all of us in this together. And where did we hear this before? In the speech that Pericles did in the Peloponnesian War. It is all of us in this together because we are better than them. So we join together.
Here's an extreme one, the Vietnamese. Now, the only thing I'm not sure, these are the North Vietnamese or the South Vietnamese being portrayed here. Probably the South. Probably.
That's the North. You've got red. You've got the rifle. The guys got. The South was supplied with US arms, and that looks like a Car 98 as well. Which was no, it isn't a Car 98. It's more Soviet. The helmet as well. It's North Vietnamese. It's about rebellion, fighting back. It's why it's showing the women with just a woman with the crossbow is get whatever you can and fight back as well. And also that looks like Chinese characters, so that may even well be Chinese propaganda in support, because China obviously.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, it might be. But obviously, I'm not an expert on Chinese characters or Asian characters for that matter, so I can't really tell. Although, Lee brought up an interesting point. World War II allies used in away propaganda after Mike Patton was to be the commander, and then in Germany elsewhere.
So this comes to a very interesting point about World War II. So one of the things with the UK, we're a relatively small place. While we had an empire, the wars hit all of the bits of our empire. We didn't have the troops, and literally they were bombing us daily. So we had to find other ways. So we went for a lot of this propaganda style stuff.
Oh shit! I got a good one. I got a good one to show. Alaska, death trap for the Jap. This was when the Japanese got into the war after Pearl Harbor.
They tried to make it up the chain of islands into that bit that sticks out the bottom of Alaska. Yeah.
Another propaganda thing is the media and critics trying to say Hollywood actors and actresses are more important than. Yeah, that's pretty common. Yeah, and modern day propaganda. Yeah, that's big. The media and critics trying to say Hollywood actors are more important. Yeah, that's pretty common. I can't disagree with that.
So one of the things I want to go back to with this World War II thing that Lee's on about, we created a fake army. It was the Fourth Army. It was based in Norfolk, even to the point of making there were balloon Shermans that were put because they look like Shermans from the top. If you're using an aircraft, they're not going to look much different. And there was the only people that were in the Fourth Army were a bunch of radio operators, and they were creating chatter on the radio that were making some of it leak through, because at this time the Germans didn't know we'd crack their codes as well, to make it seem like we had this army. Where the D-Day landings were, we tried to convince them that we were going in further south, around more towards the Boulogne end of things, rather than where the landings actually were. Basically, the whole operation of D-Day there was a lot of operational security, there was a lot of things like that, but it's a very propaganda thing as well, because at the same time, you want to take your strongest generals and you want to make them do that. You can go to the First World War, the Gallipoli campaign. Churchill stepped down. To this day, everyone blames Churchill for that campaign. It was not Churchill who were in that campaign. There was a load of internal politics amongst the rich as well. Essentially, Churchill's family had a bit of beef with the guy and a few of the other people who messed it all up. But Kitchener was one of the guys who messed it up. He died, and he was so beloved by our troops that they couldn't show that he was bad. So Churchill accepted that the propaganda would say that he was bad, even though it wasn't his fault, and he would step down for this, because he was the one who originally wrote the campaign. So that propaganda used to stop you losing a war goes in there, but at the same time, it's for morale purposes as well, or this operational work that Lee's mentioned with Patton as well, which is quite interesting.
I want to get back to the point when Lee was talking about the media and critics saying Hollywood actors are more important, and it brings up a good point, because now hear me out, because now here in Puerto Rico, now I'm gonna get to my backyard. Get to my backyard, Puerto Rico. Obviously, we just had the elections in November, where we had a chance to elect somebody from the Independence Party of Puerto Rico, but we failed miserably. So, but I'm not going to get into that. But there was actually a really big singer. I don't know if you heard of Bad Bunny. He's a very popular Puerto Rican singer, like a hip hop, a Latin hip hop artist. And he was.
I think I possibly heard the name at best.
Bad Bunny, yeah, I'm sure Lee knows what I'm talking about. And he was a huge advocate for Puerto Rican independence. He's telling Puerto Ricans, vote for the Independence Party because the pro-statehood party doesn't give a hell about you, blah, blah, blah. He's pushing all this propaganda that if you vote for the pro-statehood party, we're going to keep being a state to the United States forever, and we're never going to be self-sufficient. We're always going to be so yes, this propaganda that we're the 51st state. That's the but I'm talking about the contrary to that. Bad Bunny, and the reason people pay attention to Bad Bunny because Puerto Ricans love him. He represents. He loves Puerto Rico. He's from Puerto Rico. He was born and raised in Puerto Rico. He was born in the ghetto of Puerto Rico, so he knows what it is to grow up poor. He knows what it is. What it is to grow up in Puerto Rico and the government doing nothing for you to support you, and and the only way to and he feels that the only way for Puerto Rico to get back on its feet is to secede from the United States. Now, Lee says, I think Bad Bunny's correct. Yeah, I'm not going to get into my personal thoughts about what I think is right or wrong, although I kind of support independence, but as far as I'm going to go with that. So, but just to give you an idea about popular singers, popular people in the media pushing the propaganda about promoting Puerto Rico, that we can be better off as our own country, instead of relying on these dirty politicians that all they want to do is continue taking money from the United States and doing nothing except feeding their own pockets. Now, I have to calm down.
I'm about to get into something.
Because,
I'm about to get into something here connected to this. Once you're done, obviously, but yeah.
I got to calm down a little bit because now I'm getting into my backyard. But I don't want to make this political. But there you go.
So this then connection comes to other independence movements. Brexit, classic example of the same thing, but actually both parties were relying on really, really basic propaganda without realizing how the modern world works, and they didn't put in much effort. So the whole background of Brexit, I think we've gone into this before, it simply was there was a split in our Conservative Party. They didn't want this split, and we've had this question of should we be in Europe or should we not be in Europe for many years. It's part of the national consciousness of the UK, of how we're separate from Europe because we're on an island. There's so much to go into the history of it, but and the basic side of it is that it hasn't been that bad for us. So my thoughts on this were not a big fan of the way the European Parliament goes. However, it's okay if someone can make a strong case for us to leave, then rather the devil you know, we'll deal with this and then we'll try and work it out. But unless you can show me something good. And me and my friend realized when we were looking at all of the information we were being given, it was just really basic propaganda. It was no one was giving anything with some decent thoughts and facts behind it. The reason that I'm bringing this up is because in the modern age, and this is where we get into what you were saying about Bad Bunny, that you've got these in the social media age, these prominent musicians, actors, people who are famous, celebrities in general, who they will trot out for whichever side they're like, or you like our side, will trot out because people will trust these celebrities because they like these celebrities. So there's those celebrities being used for a propaganda purpose in that to make you vote for that thing that they want to. Often that is because there are downsides to it, and if they go too much into facts and the other side are just doing that thing, the other side aren't getting downsides, and there's a whole trust thing with it. But this is all broken down because we have modern day communication and social media that people don't know quite how to react.
Right.
On one hand, propaganda has got way, way worse. On the other hand, being able to fact check has got way, way easier.
Yes.
So you get half the population that turn around and go, no, I'm not voting for you because you lied to me. But then the other half of the population that you have to put out propaganda for, or they're not going to vote for you because they haven't seen the good thing as well. So it's this balancing act where it's been so new. I think social media really had only been around for about 20 years. It's really incredibly new. So this old style of propaganda just doesn't really work anymore because we've got the resources to go, oh, cool, this side says this. Well, I'm just going to use a VPN and go and look at what the other side saying. And they know that that is happening as well. So you get almost this Cold War level spy stuff going on, but it is on this propaganda and disinformation, which is where we then get into things like troll farms and things like that. This change to propaganda in these days. There isn't the posters, because people will look at a poster and go, well, yeah, they say it's good, but we know these bits are bad. All right, cool. It's a new thing. I'll go and try it. Or, all right, cool, I'll look into it. So it gets you interested in the thing. So the focus is on getting you interested in that topic and engaging with that topic these days, rather than here is the information. This is the only information you're going to get. Because like if you're in the 1700s getting a pamphlet, like where else are you getting the information from? I mean, there might be that guy who's like, don't trust the government, they're not doing anything. But generally in that time period, he's the crazy drunk in the village. So you're like, well, I'm not going to trust him because he's not really trustworthy. So this must be true. They wouldn't lie to me, surely. But we know that now.
God, this is a savage one. When you want to know, you write with Hitler. Oh yeah, that's savage. Even for the time period, that's pretty savage.
Oh, World War II propaganda did not hold back. It was basically, you don't do these things we want you to do. You're basically a Nazi. I mean, someone could draw parallels with the modern age, but it's these types of the irony of this is, if you saw this today, sort of modernized, that could also be used today for relieving congestion on major roads. And you think, well, that's pretty strong, but you could understand where it came from. But you might not use Hitler. You might use whichever figure is particularly hated at that point to use that. But this is the thing. Propaganda. What propaganda is exactly the same. I can think, as I said, there's another instance you could use this in the modern day. All you do is you switch it up and use something that is relevant to today. This gets into celebrity, because politicians are also celebrities. Hence why the US has often had celebrity politicians or political families who've become celebrity or married into celebrities as well. Because, I mean, you've had actors, game show hosts. I mean, Zelensky in Ukraine, he was a comedian. Like you've got these prominent people in society now that are celebrities. So the propaganda focuses on these people that are popular. It's populist propaganda, is things that are popular in society. You use that to hang on to when you're trying to convince people of things. Well, this famous person everyone likes does it. You must like it because that's the thing that everyone will like.
Right.
If you're not really going to look into it, you go, oh yeah, I like them. They're usually correct. So yeah, I'll agree with them, whatever. So your default opinion then becomes that. And that's really, it's quite insidious, really. And this is the change in propaganda. I think propaganda has become more insidious because in the UK, we learn about this in school as well. This actually have lessons about identifying this propaganda from World War II and looking into it and why it's propaganda and things like that as well. Don't know how it is in the US. Don't know if you've ever had lessons similar to that in the US. But even with that, people will get taken in by propaganda because propaganda's changed.
And
is that anti-communist by any chance?
And I want to expand upon my experience of propaganda here in Puerto Rico, because now I want to talk about the other side of the election here in Puerto Rico in 2024. While Bad Bunny was trying to promote the idea, the pro-statehood party, man, you should have seen some of these. They put some really bad propaganda commercials here. I know they're in Spanish, but man, they were some really naughty ones. I mean, some bad ones, saying that you vote for the pro-independence party, that you're going to lose your citizenship, you're going to lose your passport, we're going to be one step closer to communism. I mean, some of these were really extreme, propaganda.
Right, stop you for 1 second here. The phrase "one step closer to communism" goes back to McCarthy-era propaganda. So propaganda feeds upon itself so much. It's what we've seen all through this. Some of the things we've said about the more modern stuff, and we've gone back to that ancient bit that we've done. Right, it's like Pericles said the same thing in his speech about one of the more modern things.
Right.
We've seen this all the way through. Here's the thing we've convinced you to hate. Now all we have to say is you're going to be like that thing we've convinced you to hate.
Bingo. Yeah, and that's why I kind of brought up this poster here, because this is a Cold War propaganda poster saying the slave war facts and the free war facts, which is kind of common, which is kind of similar to what the pro statehood party, which tends to be more conservative here in Puerto Rico, did. But Aiden, I gotta be honest, man. I'm gonna be off script here. That's pretty disgusting what they did, because some people here in Puerto Rico don't understand that you can't just strip away your citizenship or passports without Congress. And we can't just become independent without Congress's vote. That's up to Congress in the United States. And by the way, Aiden, you need 66% or 287 House of Representatives to vote in favor of that. It's
the same thing. You need to change an amendment, isn't it? You need like 66% of the
a super
majority of the states to agree.
So Aiden, the amount, I gotta be honest, man, and I don't know when you go like this, that the amount of misinformation, man, was pretty disgusting. And I told my parents, man, you don't believe any of that, man. Don't believe any of that. I get mad when people vote for the pro-statehood party, even though I tend to be a little more conservative in my beliefs. But this is not a matter of conservative against liberal. This is common sense, Nathan. This is a matter of common sense.
Yes.
And like Niece just said, Congress would never let that happen. Yeah, 100% correct, Nee. You're right. It's never going to happen.
Pass a budget half the time. They're not going to do.
So basically, the way I see it is that for them, keeping the statehood thing is propaganda, because you ever heard the expression "you put the carrot in front of the faces"?
It's you. Still picture of you're sat on a donkey with like a fishing line, and there's a carrot in front of it, and it's always trying to get the carrot. The carrot's always there, but you're never getting the carrot, but the carrot's always dangled in front of your face as well. Physiology changes depending on the situation, because it is
the amount of misinformation, Nathan. I know you don't understand Spanish too well, but man, the amount of misinformation was ridiculous with some of those propaganda commercials during election season here in Puerto Rico. It was bad. I'm not sure how bad is it where you are in the United Kingdom with the liberals and conservatives.
Misinformation, I think, is actually a very important point we need to talk about, because propaganda isn't just these posters that we've been talking about, these statues. When you write something, yes, it is misinformation type of propaganda, but in the modern age, obviously, with the internet and social media, it's a lot easier because when people are on social media, I don't believe any of this. People have got shorter attention spans. People don't have shorter attention spans. What people have locked into is when you're on social media, it's often, if you're just doom scrolling, it's because you're bored. You're just looking at things.
Exactly.
You need that
exactly, man.
So you put up a piece of misinformation. If someone's half interested, they'll look at that and go, "Oh yeah, I saw that," and then scroll on. They won't fact check it. And this is the fact checking thing I was talking about before. That we have the ability to fact check now, but often we don't. But that's how propaganda used to work, because they didn't have the ability to fact check. And this is where we're getting a lot of these issues now, and a lot of this strife in countries is that now we've got the ability to fact check. You get a lot of people who scroll through. I might have been guilty of this myself. I've seen something and gone, "Oh, that isn't good. Have they done that?" Ended up in a discussion with someone who's actually looked into the topic because that happened to be a bit of politics that they liked, and gone, "Well, actually, no, if you really look into this is the thing." So it's the old pinch of salt thing. Like you got to take everything you see with a pinch of salt when it comes to that, which then creates distrust, which then makes it easier for propaganda as well. It's like propaganda is feeding on itself so much, and we see so much of it these days. And this goes back to my point on advertising as well. That advertising is propaganda, and advertising has never been so prominent in our world. Everything has advertising on it. All of the streaming services now used to pay for something so you could watch it, and that was it. You're paying to watch a thing. And now, unless you pay them even more money, they're just going to show you adverts. Like, you're paying for it so you don't have adverts. But now you have adverts, and you're paying because you're paying to see, you're paying people to advertise to you. So we're seeing that, and we're becoming inured to these things, and this gets into subliminal as well. We haven't even done subliminal, and it's insane.
Oh yeah, that's fun. Oh man, I mean, boy, I mean, because the thing about it is the propaganda. Now, here's my takeaway. Propaganda. It started off like, I remember I showed you the examples of the ancient times. It was propaganda, but it made sense. I mean, it was firm but fair.
This thing. This is what we're going to do. We're going to do good for you. You never people. There will be little bits where they've fudged it slightly when it comes to the actual thing that they're doing. But in general, we're doing this thing. But that's what we're doing. You know what's happening. Yeah.
But Mike, I just said, but man, some of these propaganda is like, oh my lord, it's just outrageous now. It's almost laughable. But the sad part is, Aiden, and he's here reporting, and he's where I am. The sad part is, a lot of people fell for it. And that's why sometimes you see me vent. Sometimes on Facebook, I try not to vent too much. I just get angry because it seems like everybody just fell for it. You just fell for it. Like I don't know how else to say it. You just fell for it.
Cool. I need a couple of seconds again because the thing I talked about for the podcast. I will be right back. I just need
Yeah. So let's see what else let's see what other good stuff I can pull up here. Here's a good one from the Cold War. Let's see, I can pull this one up. Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you, Need. I mean, it's out of control. And now here's another piece of propaganda. I don't know if you've seen this one on the red iceberg. With the countries that fall into communist: China, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, North Korea, East Germany. I don't know if you're familiar with this one, Need, because you lived in Germany, so. You might be familiar with this one, but it's like like I was telling Aiden. I mean, but that's the power of propaganda. I mean, that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to lead people to a false sense of security if you believe that. But it's just become so distrustful that it's almost laughable of how you listen to certain propaganda, and I mean, I was just showing this one, Aiden. It's easy for me to say. The red iceberg.
This is an important. The iceberg point of what you see of an issue when you see it on the surface level. That's what propaganda actually shows you. This is actually an incredibly clever piece of propaganda because people understand this concept of you see an issue, you see a topic. What you know about that topic, unless you've studied that topic, is only this surface level. So people now know about this iceberg method of you've got this bit at the top, you've got everything underneath. So we see it a lot in author spaces as authors with the whole people see the writing the book and the author being thank you for my sales, the good reviews and everything, and they'll see those bits. That's the tip of the iceberg. But underneath that, obviously, they'd see the hours and hours of writing and rewriting a chapter, deleting the whole novel and starting again, the sitting in a dark room listening to music because your brain's fried, all of that stuff. So it's all about bits that come underneath the bottom. And this is playing on that concept of that people know that. And it's a very dangerous way of doing propaganda as well, because as soon as you get people really looking into this concept, they start applying it to everything, including the people who are doing the propaganda. And then they start thinking, well, this bit of propaganda is the tip of the iceberg for these people, and therefore, but again, this comes to putting a lot of truth in something without giving you the other facts as well. So the red iceberg, it has all of these solid bits underneath. Now, the whole tombstone bit is these are countries who've died because of this. you got some truth there in some of the European countries after the Second World War. They were completely destroyed by this. You've got some truth about what happened in China as well. But have you noticed on this that you don't have, say, Vietnam? I don't know, or is this slightly earlier than Vietnam? Yeah, this is earlier than Vietnam, so it wouldn't have that. But you have. Look, it's ruined all of these countries. Well, has it ruined all of these countries? Now, today, looking back on this, we can see where it has, and the things that they've done, and the things you could point out to prove this. So when you look at it on the surface, you have to start digging deep to question this and use this concept. This is an incredibly good piece of propaganda. Incredibly good.
Yeah. Just to let you know, countries like Vietnam is still communist. Is under, I think, a neon communist kind of government. So yeah, there's still, and I think not Laos as well. Laos.
Laos, Vietnam, China nominally is still communist as well.
Yeah.
You've got, what's Mongolia doing these days? Is Mongolia still?
Mongolia. That's a good question. That's a good question, actually. Mongolia.
Because weirdly they didn't join the USSR.
They are a semi-presidential republic.
That semi is probably doing some very heavy lifting in that. So yeah, you've got this essential. Well, propaganda names the country. What's the name of North Korea? The official name, the Democratic People's Republic. Yes, because we all know the North Koreans get a say in what happens with their country.
The Democratic People. Yeah, it's funny that that's the name. Meanwhile, it's anything but. It's anything but that.
It's like buffalo wings. It's that level of nonsense.
Meanwhile, it's a socialist republic under a totalitarian hereditary dictatorship. Now it's a dictatorship. It's hereditary as well. Wow. Talk about the biggest night. Talk about the biggest night in the world. Democratic People Republic. Yeah, sure.
So this gets into the other thing about the propaganda against communism as well, and you get no good Scotsman or whatever, no true Scotsman. Sorry, that concept of what countries have truly been communist, because to go through the communist law, obviously, what you need to do is you need to get everyone together. You need to get a group of people at the top to help organize it all, to make it all together. Then those people have to give the responsibility back to the people. What you always end up finding is that you end up with these dictatorships because humans don't like giving up power. It's basically humanity can't quite do communism properly, how it's written down and how it should work, which means as a system, it doesn't work because humans aren't ready for it. But the systems that we have aren't actually communism when you really look at them, because they've got these dictatorships in charge. Because it can't be totalitarian and communist at the same time, because it's an autocracy at that point, which is akin to a hereditary monarchy, which is so similar, which is even weirder. And then you get into socialism, which is this whole thing in the US of socialism and communism being the same thing is so far out of whack. It's absolutely bizarre, because 99% of Europe is socialist. Like, we don't have it in our names because why would we? But we are it's this democratic socialist democratic republics, or social democrats is actually quite a common name for parties in Europe as well, because those are the bits of communism that we realized could actually work. So something like, say, the NHS. Actually, you go to some basic things. So the core of this is also down to people work together. They can do a thing. That's communism. You don't need a person to tell you. You can work together and you can do a thing. Well, that sounds really basic on the surface. That also sounds like Soviet propaganda as well.
Right. And it also sounds like
together. Yeah, that concept. And actually, that's how it's written down. In practice, never truly works like that. because of the way that humans are. However, some of these aspects are sort of like the half level between. It comes from socialism, and socialism is we all put into a pot. So this is the concept of how taxes are supposed to work under modern democratic governments, and it's how democracy is supposed to work. It's a form of democracy where everyone puts in together because in a group. Say you go to the pub with a group of mates, right? And say there's 5 of you. One of those group of mates is saying he's lost his job, or he didn't get the hours over the last couple of months, or his roof broke, something in his house broke, and he had to pay for something. It's not that he's poor. It's he might be, but something's happened where he doesn't have money at that moment. And then you could have another guy in there who works in sales, who had an absolutely cracking week and has got a load of money. That guy would then top up for the other guy. They buy rounds, everyone would buy rounds, but when it comes to the guy who doesn't have much money buying his next round, the guy who got this massive bonus might turn around and go, I'll buy that for you, and then we're all even. Because at some point, someone else in that group is going to be in the same position. And it will just work its way around. So buying a round of drinks, that then works. And that is this basic concept of how we get things like a fire department, police department, emergency services in general, or the NHS, or general healthcare or social systems that we have. The US has plenty of social systems as well. Just get this idea, and this is one of the problems that America's having at the moment, is that those social constructs are socialism, but they've tried to tie socialism to communism so much that it's kind of eating itself. This is where the propaganda starts failing, because the older propaganda that everyone can still see has been convinced by is now hitting against this new propaganda, and is starting to fight against itself. And you end up with this horrible situation where people are doing things against their own interests, because humans can have thoughts that we're contradictory. You can believe one thing but not another thing at the same time as well. You could believe that it's okay to have the death penalty, for example, yet you could believe strongly that all life is sacred. Those two thoughts should not go together ever, but it's quite common for those two thoughts to go together as well, that people will hold both beliefs. This is why humans can't really do communism, because we keep kind of mess it up, because humans can do that. If humans couldn't do that, communism would work, but we can't. This is where it comes up that they decided to use socialism rather than communism as well to fight against this, because socialism and communism are very tied. So if you look at USSR, that's the socialist republics. So it is socialism. So they're very, very similar concepts, but there's a way that socialism can work with other things where communism doesn't. You end up getting your propaganda causing more damage than you're trying to save it from, just to support this point of what you're doing as well, which is why it's really interesting historically when you look at it, because you have done this propaganda historically, and now you're building up to this other thing, and then you want to change tracks. You can't now, because you've already said that. So you've convinced me your propaganda worked this first time. Now it is not working. It's not working because you convinced them of this other thing. So you've got to wait 30 years for the generation to go. And then this is where we now get on social media all these generational conflicts, which has never really been a thing. It's always just been the older generation and the younger generation, which has been a thing since time immemorial, but now it's generational, as in specifically generational as well. So we kind of tied ourselves in knots with propaganda as well. And it's, as you were saying before, you had this more simplified version of, we're going to do this, aren't we good? Manifesto, a political party will put out to get elected. We're going to do these things. You understand when you look at that, there are a certain point where they cannot do those things. If there's a vote, they're not going to win every single vote. If they're winning every single vote, you're going to start getting worried, because how are they winning all of the votes? Because then you've got an echo chamber, an autocratic party, and then you're getting into other issues as well. So you expect them to. So you accept that they're not going to do everything on here, like that stele that we looked at. Hammurabi is, right, cool. This is, we know how it goes. This is going to be good for you. Well, it should be if it works, because then if everyone's on the same page, we're all going to do this thing. But what if you don't like that society? You now have to accept that you're part of that society. It's a way of modifying society so the people putting out the propaganda can mold it to what they specifically want it to be as well, which is why you can get these really conflicting bits of propaganda when you get a switch in government, which US is every 4 years, us is every 5 now. And most countries between 4 and 5 years, you get a switch in governments, which can be left to right, very swing as well. But the government as a whole will put out that this is a thing, and people start believing that after 4 or 5 years, and then you get this other thing coming on as well. And historically, it took a longer time between those things, and the propaganda was not more subtle, but people wouldn't see it as much. We're bombarded with so much of it these days that you get into those echo chambers.
I think you summarized it perfectly right there. I think that's the perfect summary. That it's not subtle anymore. It's in your face. It's literally in your face now. Oh wow! I mean, Aiden, I gotta tell you, we have really overachieved big time on this episode.
Longer than an hour. Yeah.
Hour and 31 minutes into this one, but we did warn people that this one was going to take a little longer because there's just so much to dig into. And so now I want to conclude with the modern day, like I said, with now propaganda comes in the form of memes, and now Russian, and now what they call Russian bot attacks. And he talks about what the so-called Russian bot attacks, or bots, doing memes and all this stuff around. Like the defining the country. Do you believe that there's such a thing as a bot attack trying to divide a country using memes and all that?
Yes, 100%. It's been proven a few times. So with both of Trump against Hillary, especially.
Yeah.
Some of the worst offending memes that were shared around were actually traced back to these farms of bots and trolls controlling multiple bots. We've actually got photographs of videos of people in these places doing that, because as I said, we've got so much more access to these things. That stuff, as soon as you get that on the internet, it spreads. So it doesn't matter if someone deletes it in that one place. So we can see this happening as well. This then becomes a separate issue. This is where I was talking about the paranoia earlier. Because you've seen that, if someone agrees to that point now, and it was the point that you disagreed with, you knew that original point you disagreed with, and that meme and that idea came from this troll farm. Anyone who then repeats that idea must be a troll, must be a bot, must be doing something wrong, and therefore it does not need to be looked into, because it is literally an attack on your group. So you close ranks. No, that idea is now gone. These troll farms took that on board, and this is where it becomes more insidious. They've used that to their advantage. They don't need to do that now. There was then the whole thing of the more recent Trump election, where the Russian troll farms, instead of doing the old school propaganda against, did propaganda for. Because they knew that people wouldn't trust talking points that came from troll farms, and were obviously from troll farms and bots. So they just started supporting the side that they didn't want it. And everyone went, well, clearly that's trolls, clearly that's bots, clearly that's this, because you pick up on what people think. So they then use that paranoia against you, which is classic propaganda. Use your paranoia to do that. My life is bad, point to people that are making it bad, convince them it's those people, it's those others over there. It's not us that are doing it. Oh, it's those people, the divide and conquer mentality as well. And then because of the internet, obviously you get international interference from all countries as well, even to the point of you get this gets into fifth columnists as well, people who do that type of stuff. 4chan's quite famous for this, of trolling people with horrendous things, and then it becoming an actual thing that people are talking about, getting onto international news that is causing all of these issues. And it's literally a couple of people with no morals who thought it was funny. And then it becomes a thing because we're all so paranoid and we're all so focused on, is this propaganda? Is this not propaganda? Well, that's clearly propaganda because of this. But sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's clearly just a fact. It's a thing. Look, here's some fact about this election. Oh, I don't like that, but it's about my side. Therefore, I'm going to assume it's propaganda. So you don't even need to do propaganda. People have found it harder to identify propaganda, even though they found it easier to identify traditional propaganda. And it is absolutely insane how much that's become a thing. And I do believe, and it's true, modern propaganda started with the Nazis. And people, if you talk to someone long enough who's into conspiracy theories and believes certain conspiracy theories, you will very, very quickly get to someone talking about central banks. And then it will take you about 3 sentences until they start mentioning the people who are in charge of the some famous banking corporations. And that list of people will be a list of Jewish families the Nazis are going after. It's 1930s propaganda, and it always has been. But people believe in those conspiracy theories because they won't believe the government, because there's been so much propaganda. They now no longer believe what the government says, and they think it's all propaganda. So the conspiracy theories then seem more true. But the problem is, most of those conspiracy theories were the propaganda from the 1930s. And because the Germans were incredibly good at it and incredibly successful at it, those conspiracy theories often are all tied to their anti-Jewish hatred in there, which is where we get into some of these concepts where you get anti-Jewish left-wing people spouting neo-Nazi stuff and right-wing people spouting what is neo-Nazi stuff, but defending Jewish people at the same time. And this is very bizarre disconnect. It's what I was saying, you get this dichotomy and this juxtaposition in people's thoughts that is just twisted all upon itself. But that's the best time for propaganda if you're doing it, because no one knows what's true and no one knows what isn't. And as we're getting to our final moment, no one has picked up on what my tagline has been this entire hour and 40 minutes. One of the most famous propaganda points. We have always been at war with East Asia. 1984. 1984 was people, and you'll find the right wing say it's about the left and the left say it's about the right. It's neither. It's about totalitarian governments. Both the right and the left have had totalitarian governments. This is what we were saying about communism, where we can't quite achieve communism properly. We end up with totalitarianism because we mess it up so often. The right-wing totalitarianism works and is actually the purpose of some right-wing beliefs. But that is one of the key phrases from that book that points out this, the government propaganda that you have to believe that they will just change a fact, and they'll do that. Is why the whole idea of trying to convince people that Wikipedia isn't a reliable source, rather than teaching people how to realize what is unreliable on Wikipedia. You just tell people it's unreliable. And then that means if anyone puts anything true on there, you don't have to worry about it anymore. So the propaganda has become, instead of convincing people you're good because of this and glossing over the bad bits, we still do have that. Political speeches, manifestos by any politician ever. You also have a lot of attack propaganda, which is convincing people that they're wrong in this thing. You don't have to convince people you're right. You have to convince people that they're wrong now. So it's switched on its head, but you still have both at the same time, which is where I say this confusion comes from in social media. It's really hard to describe, and I think I probably added to the confusion here. But this comes from two historical lines as well, because this fight against the government was often not positive. It was negative. You're saying the bad things about them. You're talking about the Revolutionary Wars.
Right.
Britain is bad because of Britain. These colonials are bad because of this, but at the same time, it's Britain's good because we do all of this. You get this positive propaganda.
Yeah.
As well. But a lot of propaganda is about this other side is bad. Now the propaganda isn't just about them being bad. It's about no, what they're saying is wrong. You don't even have to say whether they're bad or whether they're good. You just have to say, no, what they said is wrong. You just have to make sure that misinformation, there's enough misinformation out there that you can't find the correct information anymore because there's so many different bits in there. And that in itself is propaganda. Misinformation has become the more prominent part of it in the modern age because communication is far more important, because information is so much more readily available these days. You can do those things as well. So this is the dark side of what the printing press did to us.
Right.
Newspapers.
Yep. So anyway, guys, I mean, this was a really fun episode to do. A lot of information, a lot of things to talk about. But we are finally reaching the end. We have reached the end of this episode. I know it's 40 minutes over the minute, but you know what? It was worth it. It was just so much to talk about.
Worth it. Yeah.
And I already have the topic for next episode in 2 weeks. And you're going to notice that this has a pattern. We start with the printing press, right? The printing press led to propaganda. And now we're going to get into yellow journalism. Yellow journalism. Basically fake news. The proper term is yellow journalism. So that's
which is, I realized that we were just starting to touch upon.
But we're going to be talking more about that in the next episode. So, guys, I mean, I know it's a little long, but thank you for sticking it out. And for those who missed the episode, it will be, you'll be able to catch the replay as soon as we get off here. So, man, this was a fun one, Aiden. So, guys, thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed the rest of your day and enjoy the rest of your weekend. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks where we talk about yellow journalism. So I've been Angelus Maximus. That's been the Gate Aiden Cordier. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Take care, guys.
Take care.